The myth on the radar, the control room was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines. Lira sat at her station, her eyes fixed on the glowing blue radar screen. It was another long night shift on the outer defense station, far from any real action. Most nights were boring, just tracking small cargo ships and meteor fragments. But tonight, something strange appeared on her screen. A faint blip flickered in the corner of the radar. She frowned, adjusted the sensors, and zoomed in. Her heart skipped a beat. The outline was clear now, a design that looked exactly like the Terran Falcon class ships from old archive images. Her hands froze over the controls. In her world, humans were a legend. Her people said they vanished hundreds of years ago, after losing a great war. Stories about them were told to children at night. Tales of stubborn warriors who refused to surrender. Most called them dangerous, others called them heroes. But everyone agreed on one thing: humans were gone forever. The blip pulsed again. She checked the database. The match was undeniable. The shape, the energy signature. Even the engine pattern was the same as the myth. Her breath caught in her throat. Could it really be possible? Could the old stories be true? She quickly tapped commands. Scanning deeper, the signal was weak, almost as if the ship was cloaked. She thought of waking her commander, but she hesitated. He would laugh at her, call it a sensor ghost, and tell her to get back to work. The military had no patience for myths. They even deleted old records to keep people from believing in them. Lira's mind went back to her grandmother's voice. The humans were not just warriors. Her grandmother used to say, they were protectors, too. And they had fire in their hearts. Lira felt that same fire flicker inside her chest. Now, she wanted to know more. She needed to know more. The blip moved, slowly. It shifted closer to her station's sector. She zoomed in again. This time, the reading was sharper. The ship was huge, but graceful, with lines built for speed and power. It looked worn, as if it had traveled for centuries. Her fingers trembled as she recorded every detail. Suddenly, the blip vanished. She gasped, leaning forward. Had it cloaked again, or had it jumped to light speed? Her pulse raced as she scanned the area again. Nothing, only empty space. Lira leaned back in her chair, her mind full of questions. Why would a human ship be here, if humans were gone? Who was flying it? Was it a ghost ship from the past, or something more? A soft beeping sound snapped her back. The blip had returned, even closer than before. Her hands flew over the controls. This time she saw a faint distortion, like light bending around something invisible. It wasn't a perfect cloak. It was an old system, leaking tiny hints of its position. She bit her lip. If she reported this, her superiors might erase the data and mark her as unstable. But if she kept it a secret, she could lose her chance to uncover the truth. Her heart pounded. She chose to keep it to herself. For now, she copied the scan data onto a hidden personal chip, sliding it into her pocket. Every instinct told her this was important. Every sense told her that something was coming. The myths had always said that if humans returned, they would not come quietly. Far away, beyond the station's range, a shadow moved through the stars. It was the same ship she had seen on her radar, and now it was changing its course, heading straight for her station. Lira didn't know it yet, but the moment she saw that blip, her life had already changed. The myth was real, and soon, the entire galaxy would know. Lira could not sleep. Her small quarters felt smaller than usual, the dim light casting shadows that seemed to whisper at her. The hidden data chip lay on the table, its silver surface catching the glow. She stared at it, as if it could answer her questions. The blip on the radar, the human ship design, the old stories, they spun in her head like a storm. Finally, she slid the chip into her private reader. Lines of encrypted scans and images appeared. She tapped to compare them with the old restricted database. The match was exact. The same engine pattern, the same hull curves, the same weapon placement. Her heart thudded in her ears. Her people had buried these records. Only high officers or archivists could access them. But Lira had her ways. She'd always been curious about history, and the stories her grandmother told had pushed her to learn more. Most said those were just bedtime tales, but to Lira, they had always felt like warnings. She remembered one story clearly. Her grandmother's voice was soft but heavy with emotion. The humans fought, not because they loved war, but because they would never kneel, even if it meant their end, she had said. Lira had been a child then, picturing mighty warriors standing against impossible odds. She had not understood the sadness in her grandmother's eyes. Now, looking at the scans, she began to understand. If humans were truly gone, why hide the records? If they were only a myth, why erase every trace? Secrets were dangerous, and this secret felt heavy, like the kind of truth that could change worlds. The station's internal clock showed it was deep into night cycle. Most of the crew was asleep. Only the automated patrol drones moved silently through the corridors. Lira wrapped herself in a thin jacket and slipped out. Her boots barely made a sound against the cold metal floor. She made her way to the old archive chamber, a forgotten room deep in the station's lower decks. Few ever came here. The air smelled stale. Stacks of unused data cores lined the shelves. She activated an old terminal and entered a stolen clearance code. The screen flickered, then filled with ancient files. There were battle reports, old star maps, and pictures. She saw images of humans, men and women standing beside ships with proud, defiant faces. Some were smiling, some scarred, but all looked alive in a way her own people never did. They looked like they belonged to the stars, not just living in them. She kept scrolling until she found something chilling. The last recorded battle of the humans. It showed a fleet, outnumbered 10-1, fighting to the last ship. Explosions lit the dark space like dying suns, and in the final image, a Terran Falcon ship, the exact model she had seen on her radar, vanished into a wormhole before enemy fire could destroy it. The report ended there, marked as lost to history. Her hands trembled. Could the ship she saw be the same? One from the final battle? If so, where had it been all these years? And why was it here now? Her chest tightened with a mix of fear and excitement. A faint beeping from her wristcom made her jump. It was a system alert. The radar station had logged a brief, unregistered transmission on an ancient frequency. The origin point matched the sector of the blip. Her pulse quickened. The transmission was scrambled, but she recognized the tone. It was not a threat. It was a call. She copied the transmission to her chip and shut down the terminal. As she stepped out of the archive chamber, she glanced over her shoulder. The room felt different now. Like the ghosts of the past were watching her. She walked quickly back to her quarters, the chip clutched in her hand. Lira sat on her bed, the silence pressing in. The call from the unknown ship echoed in her mind. She didn't know the words, but she understood the feeling. Urgent, deliberate, directed at her. And deep down, she knew one thing. The myths were not dead. They were awake, and they were reaching out. The first contact the next night cycle. The control room was almost empty. Most of the crew had left after the routine checks. Lira stayed behind, pretending to finish her shift reports. In reality, her eyes kept drifting to the radar. The rest of the galaxy was quiet, but she knew better. For hours, the screen remained still. Then, without warning, the blip appeared again, closer than it had ever been before. Lira's breath caught. The ship had stopped just outside the station's official sensor range. Her fingers danced over the controls. She activated a private scan, bypassing the system logs. The image sharpened faint distortions in the starlight, like waves in water. When something invisible moves through it, her heart pounded in her ears. Then, her console crackled. It wasn't the usual clean digital tone. It was rough, old, almost broken. A voice came through, deep, steady, speaking in a language she had only heard in recordings, ancient Earth standard. She didn't understand the words, but the voice carried something urgent, not hostile, but insistent, against every rule. She leaned forward and pressed the response key. "Identify yourself," she said softly. No reply came in her language. Instead, the voice repeated, slower this time, as if trying to make her understand. Her training told her to cut the line, but her instincts told her to keep listening. The voice changed, the tone softening. She caught one word from her studies of old myths. Friend. Her throat tightened, without thinking. She sent a short ping signal. It was a risk. A ping revealed her exact position. But she needed to know if the ship was real. A moment later, her radar lit up. The distortion vanished, and there it was, a massive, battle-worn vessel, sleek and deadly. Its hull dark except for faint glows along the seams. The Terran Falcon. Class. Exactly as the archives had shown. Her pulse raced. Her mind screamed a call for backup. But her heart whispered, "Don't." The ship hovered in silence. Its presence filled the viewport like a shadow out of time. For a moment, neither side moved. Then a small light blinked near the front of the vessel. She realized it was signaling her. The station's automated systems hadn't detected it. Their algorithms didn't even recognize the code. But Lira did. It was an ancient distress pattern, one she had read about in forbidden history files. Why would they be sending a distress signal? She hesitated only a second before opening a narrow band channel. The voice returned, this time slower. Her translator struggled, but managed to form a partial sentence. "Need to meet you. Danger." Lyra's hands trembled on the console. She should have reported it immediately. Instead, she found herself whispering, "Where?" A set of coordinates appeared on her private screen, far enough to be outside station sensors, but close enough she could reach in a scout craft within minutes. Her mind raced. If she left now, she'd have to disable tracking on her craft. If she was caught, the punishment would be severe. Still, she was already moving. Her decision had been made the moment she saw the blip. Minutes later, she slipped into the hangar bay. Only a pair of security drones floated nearby, their sensors scanning lazily. She climbed into a small scout ship and sealed the hatch. With a few quick keystrokes, she cut the transponder and masked the launch signature. The scout glided silently into space. The coordinates drew her toward a shadowed section of space between drifting asteroids. Her eyes scanned the darkness. Then, slowly, the Terran Falcon emerged from behind a rock the size of a city block. Its engines glowed faintly. Its hull scarred but strong. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. A docking hatch opened on its side. Her ship was pulled gently toward it by a magnetic lock. Lyra's heartbeat thundered. When the hatch sealed behind her, the noise of space vanished. Replaced by the low hum of the human ship's systems, the inner airlock cycled. The door slid open. Standing there was a tall man in a worn black uniform. His hair was dark, his face lined with years of experience, his eyes sharp yet calm. On his chest was a symbol she had only seen in history files, the Terran insignia. He looked at her as if he had been expecting her. "Lira," he said in her language, his accent strange but clear. Her stomach nodded. He knew her name, and in that moment, she realized this was no accident. The man in the shadows. The human man stood still for a long moment, his gaze locked on Lira. His presence felt heavy, like he carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken stories. He didn't rush to speak, and somehow, that silence made her more uneasy. The ship's corridor around them was dimly lit, the walls lined with panels that looked patched and repaired over decades. It smelled faintly of metal and old oil, not like the sterile, polished air of her station. "You know my name," she finally said, her voice low. "Yes," he replied, his tone calm but firm, "and I know why you're here." Her heart thudded harder. "How?" she whispered. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned and gestured for her to follow. They walked deeper into the ship, the hum of engines vibrating under her boots. Every corner they passed told her this vessel had seen battles, scorch marks on the walls, dents in the floor, yet it was still alive, still fighting to stay in the stars. He led her into a small command room. A large holodisplay in the center showed star maps, old and new, overlaid with shifting lines of data. "I am Captain Raylan," he said, standing tall. She recognized the name. It had been in the restricted files, a human captain listed as missing in action during the last great battle. "That's not possible," she murmured. "You should be dead," he finished for her. "Yes, that's what your people want you to believe." Her mind raced. He moved closer to the holodisplay and tapped a sequence. Images filled the air between them, grainy footage of ships exploding, fleets clashing, and alien vessels closing in on human lines. "These are from my ship's logs," he said, "the day your empire declared victory over humanity." She frowned. "The records say humans attacked first." Raylan's eyes hardened. "They lied," he said. "We fought because they were erasing entire colonies, enslaving worlds, and we refused to bow." She wanted to argue, but the images before her made her stomach twist. She saw alien warships burning civilian transports, saw planets bombarded from orbit, and then she saw something even worse. Alien troops rounding up human survivors, dragging them into cages. Her voice trembled. Why? Why would they hide this? Because the truth would break their control, Raylan said quietly. And now, they'll do anything to make sure it stays buried. She stared at him, her mind struggling to hold the weight of this revelation. The myths she grew up hearing had painted humans as reckless monsters, but here stood a man who had survived centuries of hiding, carrying proof of his people's innocence. "Why contact me?" she asked cautiously. "Because you saw me," he said. "And because I've been watching you for a while." Her stomach tightened. "Watching me," she repeated. "Yes," he said. "You have access to the archives. You've always been curious about the truth, and you have something most of your people lost long ago, doubt." She felt exposed under his steady gaze. "What do you want from me?" she asked. He stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. "To help me finish what we started," he said. "I need someone inside your station. Someone who can move without drawing attention. Someone who can get me the codes to bypass their fleet patrols." Lira's instincts screamed at her to refuse. Helping him meant betraying everything she had ever sworn loyalty to. But deep inside, she felt the pull of that same fire her grandmother had spoken of. Before she could answer, a sharp alarm echoed through the ship. Raylan turned to the console, and his jaw tightened. "They've found you," he said. "What?" she asked quickly. "The moment you left your station without clearance, their tracking systems flagged you," he said. "They're coming for you, and for me." Her chest tightened. "How long?" she asked. "Minutes," he said. "Moving to the controls. We can outrun them, but only if you help me." The ship's holodisplay shifted to show the incoming alien warships, their formations tightening like a predator's jaws. Raylan's eyes met hers again. "This is your choice, Lira. Go back and pretend you saw nothing, or help me and see the galaxy for what it truly is." Her pulse roared in her ears. The man before her was supposed to be an enemy, a ghost from a dead race, but somehow, standing here, she felt she was looking at the only person telling her the truth. Outside, the stars waited, and with them, the danger. Lira drew a long breath, knowing that whatever she said next would decide the course of her life. The pursuit warning lights flashed across the human ship's narrow corridors. A deep alarm echoed through the hull, low and steady, like the heartbeat of something alive. Lira gripped the edge of the nearest console as the ship trembled under. A sudden burst of acceleration. Outside, the stars stretched into thin lines. The Falcon was moving fast, but not fast enough. "They're coming in hot," Raylan said, his voice sharp and calm at the same time. On the holodisplay, bright red markers appeared, alien warships in attack formation. There were at least 6 of them, each one larger than the Falcon, their energy signatures flaring like hunting beasts. "They've already locked onto us," Lira said, her voice tight. Then we make sure they regret it, Raylan replied without looking up. He moved to the main controls, his hands a blur, as he switched between systems. Shields at 30%, weapons cold, he muttered. We'll need to fire only when it counts. Lira slid into the secondary station without needing to be told. Her radar screen lit up with enemy positions, their movement patterns forming a tightening circle. They're trying to box us in, she warned. Not if we break the box first, he said. The Falcon banked hard to the left, its old engines groaning. Through the forward viewport, an asteroid field loomed ahead, massive rocks drifting in slow, silent dances. They'll expect us to turn away, Raylan said, so we'll go through. That's suicide, Lira said. That's survival, he corrected. The alien ships fired first. Bright lances of plasma cutting through the dark. The Falcon twisted, dove, and rolled, each movement so sharp that Lira had to grip the console to stay in her seat. She watched the radar closely, calling out distances between the asteroids. Raylan used them like shields, slipping the Falcon behind their cover. Just as enemy fire exploded against rock, one alien ship tried to follow them in. Raylan's eyes narrowed. Target their forward stabilizers, he said. Lira's fingers flew over the targeting system. Locking on to the ship's weak point, Raylan pressed the trigger. The Falcon's cannons roared once, a sharp, bright flash tearing through space, and the alien ship spun out of control, slamming into an asteroid. 5 left, Lira said. They'll call for reinforcements, Raylan replied. He pushed the Falcon deeper into the field, weaving through gaps so narrow that Lira could see the jagged rock walls scrape the ship's shields. The pursuit was relentless. The enemy ships moved like a pack, adjusting to every turn, every feint. A warning tone rang out. They're charging a heavy beam, Lira reported, her eyes wide. If that hits us, we're dust, Raylan said. He suddenly pulled the Falcon into a steep climb between two massive asteroids. The alien beam fired, but instead of hitting them, it struck another asteroid, sending huge fragments spinning into space. One of the fragments smashed into an alien cruiser, breaking its formation. Raylan didn't waste the opening. He dove the Falcon under the debris cloud, engines screaming. The ship shook violently as smaller rocks slammed into the shields. Shields at 15%, Lira called out. We're almost clear, Raylan said, his eyes locked on the narrow exit ahead. But 2 alien ships had already raced around the other side of the field, waiting for them. They're blocking the exit, Lira said quickly. Raylan's jaw tightened. Not for long, he said, flipping a series of switches. A deep thrum built inside the Falcon. Lira glanced at him. What is that? Something your people think we lost, Raylan replied. An overcharged EMP. As the Falcon burst from the asteroid field, the 2 alien ships opened fire. Raylan released the EMP. A pulse of blinding blue light spread out from the Falcon like a ripple in water. The alien ships shuddered, their lights flickering out. Drifting powerless in space, Raylan pushed the Falcon's engines to full. The remaining pursuers were still tangled in the asteroid field, trying to catch up. In seconds, they were gone from the radar. Only the silence of deep space remained. Lira leaned back in her seat, her chest rising and falling fast. That was impossible, she said quietly. Raylan finally looked at her, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Humans have a habit of making the impossible work, he said. She stared at him, realizing more and more that the myths had been wrong. These people weren't just survivors, they were fighters, and now, she was caught in their fight too. Choosing sides, the Falcon's engines settled into a steady hum. The radar was finally clear, no hostile signals, no signs of pursuit. But inside Lira's chest, the storm had only grown louder. She sat in the co-pilot seat, staring at the dark expanse ahead, her mind running in circles. Raylan adjusted the ship's course, setting it toward a distant cluster of faint stars. For a moment, the silence between them was heavy. Then his voice broke it. They won't stop, he said, his tone matter-of-fact. now that you've made contact with me. Your people will mark you as a threat." Lira looked at him sharply. "I didn't do anything," she said, almost defensively. Raylan gave her a knowing look. "You did," he said. "You listened. You didn't report me. You helped me escape their trap, and in their eyes. That's enough." She wanted to argue, but deep inside, she knew he was right. The station's commanders didn't need proof. Suspicion alone was enough to condemn her. She had seen it happen before. People relocated quietly, never to return. Her wristcom buzzed suddenly. She froze. Raylan glanced at the device, his hand hovering over the weapons console. "Answer it," he said, his voice calm but edged. The small screen lit up with the face of her commander. His expression was cold, his eyes sharp as blades. "Lira," he said slowly, "we detected your craft leaving without clearance. We also detected something else." Her throat felt dry. "What do you mean?" she asked carefully. "A ship," the commander said, "one that shouldn't exist, and yet you were right next to it." She said nothing. The commander leaned closer to the camera. "Return now, and you may keep your position," he said. "Refuse, and you will be hunted as a traitor." The call ended abruptly, leaving only the low hum of the ship. Lira stared at the empty screen, her pulse racing. Her whole life, she had trained to serve the fleet, her friends, her family, her future all tied to the Empire's rules. If she returned now, she might live, but she would carry the memory of what she had seen. She would live in silence, pretending the truth didn't exist. Raylan's voice was softer now. "They gave you a choice. But it's not a real choice," he said. "They want you to forget. They want you to close your eyes and obey." Lira turned toward him. "And you?" she asked. "What do you want?" "From me." He met her gaze without hesitation. "I want you to see the galaxy as it truly is," he said, "and to help me make it better." The words hung in the air between them. It wasn't a demand. It was an offer that would tear her life apart if she accepted it. Her thoughts spiraled. If she went back, she would keep her rank, her safety, her place. But she would also become part of the same system that destroyed worlds, that lied about history. If she stayed, she would be branded a traitor, hunted forever. But she would fight for something real, something her grandmother would have believed in. She remembered her grandmother's voice, telling her that humans had fire in their hearts. She realized that maybe she had a little of that fire too. Her hands tightened into fists. "I can't unsee what I've seen," she whispered. Raylan gave a slow nod. "Then you've already made your choice," he said. He leaned over the console and activated a long-range transmitter. "Once we send this data, your people will know where you stand," he warned. "What data?" she asked. Raylan's lips curved into a faint, grim smile. "Everything they tried to erase," he said. On the holodisplay, files began to open. Footage, reports, intercepted orders, and evidence of the Empire's crimes. Lira's heart pounded as she realized the scale of it. If this broadcast went through, the truth would spread beyond their control. "They'll come for us faster than before," she said. "They already are," Raylan replied. He pressed the transmit key. A green light blinked, and the signal spread like ripples in a dark ocean. Somewhere out there, people would see the truth and question the lies they'd been fed. The message could not be undone. Lira sat back, her decision heavy on her shoulders, but strangely freeing. She had chosen her side, not the side she was born into, but the side she believed in. Glanced at her with something like respect in his eyes. "Welcome to the fight," he said. The new alliance, the Falcon, drifted through the quiet darkness of space. The stars around them shimmered like cold fire, each one a world waiting to be touched. The broadcast had been sent, and now there was no turning back. For Lira, the choice was final, her past life already fading into the distance. She sat at the co-pilot station, watching the endless black stretch before her. Raylan worked silently at the main console, adjusting navigation routes and checking the ship's systems. The Falcon's hull still carried scars from the chase, but it was alive, and so were they. It felt strange being free and hunted at the same time. Suddenly, the long-range scanner beeped. Lira leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. Multiple signals, she said. Raylan checked the readings. A small smile ghosted across his face. They heard us, he said. One by one, new ships emerged. From the shadows, some were small, barely more than patched-up freighters. Others were larger, with weapons mounted crudely on their hulls, but each carried the same insignia, a stylized blue star, the mark of the hidden human colonies. They came fast, Lira said quietly. When you light a signal in the dark, those who are waiting will always come, Raylan replied. The coms crackled with voices. Rough, determined, each captain, confirming their readiness. She could hear the hope under the grit. They weren't just answering a call. They were answering a promise. Raylan turned to her. You're going to meet the rest of us, he said. The rest? She asked. Humans aren't as extinct as they wanted you to believe, he said. There are colonies hidden in uncharted systems, fleets scattered across the galaxy, and now, you, her chest tightened. You're trusting me with all this, she said. Raylan studied her for a moment before nodding. You've already risked your life, and you chose the truth over safety. That makes you one of us, he said. The Falcon led the small convoy toward a massive shadow on the edge of a nebula. As they drew closer, the shape resolved into a colossal station built into an asteroid. Its surface bristled with antennas, turrets, and docking bays. Lights glimmered across its surface like a city floating in the dark. This is Haven, Raylan said, our home between the stars. Lira stared as the convoy entered a wide hangar bay. Inside, she saw people, humans, walking, laughing, working on ships. Some were armored, some wore simple work clothes. All of them looked alive in a way her people rarely did. There was no rigid order, no cold silence, just movement, purpose, and a kind of unspoken unity. When the Falcon's ramp lowered, warm air rushed in. A small group stood waiting. An older woman stepped forward, her hair streaked with silver, her eyes sharp but kind. Raylan, she said. You brought someone new. This is Lira, Raylan said simply. She's seen the truth. The woman studied her for a long moment. Welcome, she said finally. You'll find no empire here, only those who refuse to kneel. Lira felt the tension in her shoulders ease. Just a little. For the first time, she wasn't looking over her shoulder. For the first time, she wasn't alone. Days passed in a blur. Lira learned about the human colonies, how they'd hidden, traded in secret, fought small battles in the shadows. She trained with their pilots, studied their history without fear of censorship. Every day, she felt the fire inside her grow stronger. She was no longer just an observer. She was part of something greater. One evening, she stood on the Falcon's bridge, watching the fleet assemble outside the station. Dozens of ships, some old, some newly built, but all ready for what was coming. Raylan stood beside her, his arms crossed. They'll come for us, she said. They already are, he replied. But now, we'll be ready. She thought about the girl she had been just days ago, sitting in a quiet control room, bored and obedient. That girl was gone. Now, she was Lira of the Falcon, a bridge between two worlds, a witness to the truth, a fighter in a war that had been hidden for generations. The fleet began to move, engines flaring like stars being born. Raylan looked at her and gave a rare smile. The myth was real, all along, he said. Lira smiled back, her voice steady. And now, the galaxy will know.